welcome to the show, Magical Ones. Today we've thrown a kind of businessy episode into the mix, actually. I say this, but it's also really about the personal journey of healing our wounds around being our authentic selves, because personal and business can't really be separated. The journey of like personal healing and becoming a healer is really all entwined. Our work is our work, and it will show up in all areas of our lives. And if you're at the part of the Secret Witch journey where you're wondering, how do I share my voice authentically, whether that's in like our family and our friendships, sharing like the witchy woo part of ourselves, or how do I express my voice authentically as a healer, as a, reaching people as a business and leaning into that, this is going to be a really valuable episode for you. I love this episode. If you do too, and you're thinking, this is great, and I'm feeling some of the fears that were mentioned here, I'd love to hear some of the witch wounds about actually expressing myself before I even step into the idea of being a healer, or as I do. For example, the fear of being judged, the fear of failing, the fear of claiming your gifts, obliterating your life. Then you might also enjoy being in our Secret Witches Apothecary membership, where we're learning how to heal all of these things, and I'm guiding women into that healing. I'd love to invite you, visit nicolebarton.co.uk/membership to join our welcoming sisterhood and be in on all the magical healing. On the Secret Witch Show today, though, our guest is Kim Kaase. Kim is the creator of Authentic Influence, a transformative messaging framework designed for experienced coaches, mentors, and visionaries. With a background in high-level sales and business strategy, she helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs craft clear, aligned messages that resonate deeply without resorting to hype or manipulation, two of the things that secret witches do not love. She empowers her clients to amplify their impact while staying true to their soul voice and values. Her mission is to revolutionize marketing by fostering genuine connection, integrity, and sustainability in business. In this episode, we truly explore the value of authentic soul expression and why it's so important, both personally and in our businesses as healers. Reflecting on Kim's healing journey, her spiritual awakenings, and the realization that true self-expression requires surrender to a deeper divine guidance, she dived into the distinction between authentic influence and manipulation, the ongoing nature of reclaiming our authentic self and the fears and challenges that come up with that, and the revolutionary potential of AI in capturing and harnessing our true message, even though it may seem the very opposite of authentic. She's expressed the importance of aligning with our soul to express our gifts as a powerful reminder for aspiring healers that sharing our voice is the remedy. Let's dive in. Welcome, Kim. I'm so delighted to have you on the show. We connected a little while back through a mutual friend, and I just love the truth and wisdom that you bring, and love as well. We were just talking about love as well, that you bring to the topics of authenticity as a kind of personal healing theme, but also like you called it influence as a business healing theme as well. And I think the two kind of merge so beautifully together. And so I am really excited to dive into the topic of authenticity and how to express our soul into the world from inner wisdom. And I also saw this week that you're feeling spicy. So I'm here for the wildness of all the treats. So welcome.
You so much. I'm looking forward to this conversation in a big way.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Thank you for being here. So I was just explaining before the call that I often love to start with inviting you into sharing your story. And the premise of my whole kind of body of work, I guess, is that women's stories are so healing for other women. And in that way, I think we're kind of like all archetypal remedies. I describe it for others. So my first invitation, if you'd like to accept it, is to share a little bit about your own journey, particularly with expressing your soul into the world authentically.
Yes. Oh, I'd love to share that story. It's funny because when I was growing up, it didn't feel safe to express who I really was out into the world. Like I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and self-expression, at least the way I grew up, wasn't really a thing. What was valued much more was the expectations of society and
Mhm.
fitting in and blending in and not causing too much trouble, you know? And so now I'm approaching 60 here in the next few years. It's been a real journey. My first my first foray into really expressing myself was leaving my corporate job in 2011,
Mm.
where I created a lot of success, but was burned out as all get out. You know, I was a very high performer. I did a great work at my job and I loved it in a lot of ways, but was really burned out
Mhm.
and really took my gifts and started coaching people in business and had a bit of a spiritual awakening in there, a few spiritual shakeups in there in the last
Mm.
dozen or so years. And all of that brought me to the end of 2023, where I was doing really good work with my clients, helping them grow their businesses, a lot of times having very deep conversations,
Mm.
you know, because I've never done surface level, but still feeling for myself like my soul wasn't being expressed out into the world. And so I got this divine download in December of 2023 to pause, that I really hadn't paused, you know, in the decade or so since leaving corporate, and that I was kind of waiting on some divine guidance. So I finished up a lot of the work I was doing that year. I kept a few kind of long-term clients, but really 2024 was quiet for most of the year and
Mm.
longer than I had bargained for. Like I really thought, oh yeah, I'll take a few weeks off. I'll hear this really beautiful spiritual purpose message and I'll get on my way. I'll get back to it. And that's not really what happened. I it was that alone was a healing journey to be able to sit in the void, right? With not a lot of things going on, you know, not a lot of income coming in, but knowing it was right. Like having
Mm.
knowing that doing nothing and listening was right. And in May, I got another divine download and it was not what I wanted to hear. It's what I was sharing with you earlier, which was stop listening for a spiritual message.
Mm.
And that gobsmacked me because I really thought this pause was about waiting for something that was much more spiritual and deep. So I really took that to heart, even though I was really disappointed because I thought, well, then
Mhm.
what am I really listening for? Am I going to miss it? And in July, was sitting on the deck at a lake in Wisconsin, we were on vacation and I got another message and it was like, you're to work with people on messaging. And I cried, like I bawled because my own journey, think about this as someone who didn't feel like she could really express herself. And the many times I tried to create a message for myself was like, it was so hard. I'd spend months and hundreds of hours and kind of come up with something that didn't make sense using the kind of traditional marketing methods,
Mhm.
right? And I had also, when I worked with business clients, helped them with messaging. And I had a really good process for doing that, by the way, but it took a long time. And so they would get 75% of the way there and get frustrated and quit. And so like messaging was like not what I thought I was listening for
Mm.
because it had been such a thorn in my own side. So but I know when I get these divine messages that I have to listen. Like I know that at 58, I know like I can't take the long way around, you know, and kick and scream. So a few days later, I said, okay, just show me how. Just show me how. I said to Spirit, show me how to do this because I don't know how. And it was another couple of months. Interesting things happened in there. I won't go into all the details, but I found myself in an AI class at the end of September and all of a sudden, and I had played with AI some, mostly argued with it actually. But all of a sudden I started to see like we don't want AI, in my opinion, to write for us, but it can hold big ideas much better than the human brain. That's what I at my age anyway, right?
Mhm.
And I started to see within a few days, this is the how. This is the thing I asked spirit for direction on, not in the writing, not in the telling people what the message is, but in holding all the ideas and weaving the threads. And that took me on a journey that I often describe as riding a laser beam for about 2 months because I was iterating and creating and then throwing stuff into my custom GPT and going like, what about this? And it would remind me like, no, that's not one of the values. So it was really wild because through all this, I was able to bring my voice out much more widely onto social media, into what I'm doing in a way that felt amazing to me. It didn't feel like kind of marketing or, like that
Mm.
traditional marketing lingo. It felt like me, but it started to touch people in a really deep way. And that's when I realized, oh, this, like, I'm not creating this just for me. I'm
Mm.
creating it for the sensitive souls, right? The ones who the traditional methods cannot work for them,
Mm. Mm.
because we're bringing such our true voice.
Mm, I love that. I love one of the things I loved that you shared was around like, I sobbed. Like I got this download and like I sobbed. And I so resonate with that. And I think many people who are even listening to this as secret witches will resonate with that because it's very unlikely we go, oh, I'm a witch. Cool. It's like, oh, I'm a witch. Oh my God, now what? Like, how do I?
Right. Right. And this is the thing, like, and some of your audience may resonate with this. Like, I thought then immediately, I thought, well, then how am I going to figure this out? Right. How am I going to do this? But no, like, I really had, again, when we get quiet, and this was the benefit of spending 6, 7, 8 months, 9 in relative, not forcing myself to do stuff, is like, I could really hear what was mine and what was the divine flow.
Mm.
And so when I did, I just sobbed, like, I can't do this. And then I remembered, oh, wait a minute, just show me how. Just show
Mm.
me how. Just show me. And then I was shown. And again, these things, they're not always in our timing,
Mm.
right? I would have rather all of that happen in about 3 to 4 weeks. I would have been much more efficient, but it was many months long. But again, I'm
Mm.
stepping into this year. I have my second Saturn return coming up here in April. So I'm stepping into like the fullness of me, and that
Mm.
takes time. That's the creative process. What I'm really realizing is that creative process that I was in, it takes the stepping into the void, that uncertainty,
Mm.
that crying out at times,
Mm.
to get to the clarity.
Mm.
And that's the piece I think a lot of people don't want to do. I mean, I didn't want to do it for a long time. I just wanted to
Mm.
fill out the form and like tell me what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes. And I think that's often what I call it as like looking for the quick fix. Like we're so often looking for somebody to just go, okay, this is the way, like let's go there. And it's like, no, like the whole kind of piece about reclaiming our expression is about finding our way. And I don't know how you feel about that, if that feels, true
Yes.
to you. But I think, yeah, it's something that as secret witches, we've really learned to go to the healer and they'll give us, a remedy. Whereas the work that I'm about is about like really going in and like looking at aspects of ourselves and reclaiming those
Yes.
ourselves.
Yes, all of this is an iterative process. Like, and that's the piece that people, I think, in these times when there's a hack for everything, there's a shortcut to everything. I'm a line 2 in human design. I'm a manifesting generator. We're really good at shortcuts. But this work that we're talking about can't be shortcutted, and it
Mm,
can't be farmed out to someone else, especially the people I know that are listening to your podcast, right? This is about our
mm,
inner work, and it is iterative. It's not we sit down one time and we have it all sorted. It's not that we heal ourselves one time. These things work in layers, whether we're talking about our message or inner healing or money or whatever. It's very layered, and taking that, the creative tension, that discomfort. And again, what I see that a lot of people do, and I certainly was guilty of this for many years, is when I was sitting in the discomfort, what I would do is go find a new project to do.
mm,
Oh, I need to go start a podcast, or oh, I needed to start a YouTube channel. Or I couldn't sit in the discomfort of not knowing what I wanted to say. And what I
mm,
saw, yeah, in 2024 was like, oh, this discomfort is what actually brings me to clarity. There's no project to do here.
yes.
Right. And this is where people get really busy. When I look at people's businesses, like they have a lot of things going on. Like, what I know is, no, they're probably not in their truth yet because they
Mm,
haven't let it sit long enough.
yes. Yeah, that was such my journey as well. What I want to kind of take it back actually to what you shared around like your truth not feeling safe, because it feels like what where you've got to now is that kind of like the capacity to even just hold like, okay, I'm going to listen for my truth, which again like feels huge. And so I'm wondering like because and again like the secret which will often feel what you described at the start in your own journey around like not feeling safe in your truth and having like all the expectations of society, and also like in that expectation we kind of burn out like you said, you know, that I really resonated that part of your story because you know I was the same, like that sense of like being high performing, keeping on the hamster wheel, keeping going, but really we're doing all of that and sacrificing who we are. So I would love to hear, firstly, actually, because the word authenticity is kind of like bandied around a lot. I would love to hear what you kind of how you define authenticity as well. I think that would be a gorgeous place to
Mm.
start.
Oh, that's such a great question. It's like, to me, authenticity is really that expression of the deepest part of our soul, of our truth, no matter what.
Mm, mm,
You know, like it's not conditional.
mm,
And I like, for me, my journey with that is like I got really good. I was a, you know, like you're talking about, high performer. I was really good at a lot of things, and I was really good at reading what the other person needed from me and how to
mm,
say it in a way that would land perfectly for them. But as we know, like when I'm making sure my boss heard what he needed to hear, or my husband, or my like all these
mm,
different people, the parts of ourselves get betrayed,
mm,
you know? And this is for me when I really had another sort of spiritual waking up in about 2016, 2017. And so much of that was like when I'm not defining myself by what other people need and what they need to hear from me, even though I'm really good at that, uh, who am I? Right? This is really when we're talking about authenticity, like who are we at core?
mm.
Are we
I
able
love
to
that.
express? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
and again, sitting with that is not a comfortable question.
Mm. Yeah, it's like existential crisis kind of question. Who am I?
Do
I love
I?
that. Yeah. And there's
Right?
almost
And
like I see there's almost like two aspects to that. It's like who am I in the kind of divine sense, and also who am I in my unique expression. I don't know how you feel
yes.
about that, but often when I'm talking about authenticity, it's both really. Mm.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is. And this is the interesting part, like bringing in a little bit about marketing too. So this is where it gets a bit tricky, right? Because so many people have had that journey that we've just been talking about of like, who am I to that person? Who am I to that person? But then when we want to bring our gifts out into a wider marketplace, and we know that we could be such a support for other people, there's this weaving that needs to happen, because I feel like in the market, there's either the traditional way of doing marketing, which doesn't feel good to any of us, feels like, you know, like a blazer that's too tight.
Mm.
And then there's the pure self-expression, which in the feminine communities, like people really get behind that. But it, like from what I've seen and tried, doesn't actually really help businesses grow if that's 100% of what you're doing. So there's this weaving that needs to happen of like those of us who are more, I'm going to say, I don't, there aren't levels, that like just more evolved souls, more sensitive souls. We're in touch with something deeper. As we've had that kind of ascension process, then we have to get really good at coming back down a little bit,
I love that.
right? To
Yeah.
talk to the people who can really benefit from our gifts. That is an art. And that's the part for me. That was so much part of my journey, because I just couldn't quite weave that all together. But that's really what I feel like I'm here to help people do
I love
is,
that. I love that.
right?
And
Yeah.
also, there's almost like that kind of twofold journey in that, isn't there? That we were talking about just before we press record. Is this sense of like there's the healing of the personal side of that, and that kind of reclamation of authenticity, and there's then the kind of business side of that, like where we're like, okay, like I'm here to express my witch. I often kind of describe the reclamation of our witch as like first you know we're in, and it's not really linear as you probably know, but like like there's the healing of ourselves, and through that we kind of find out what our wounds are, what our gifts are, and like there's that kind of discovery process of like what our remedy is, if you like, in the world. And then there's the part where we go, okay, now we're going to express this into the world. And that's
Yes.
almost like the businessy piece that I see in many ways as well. I mean, there's still personal healing as well in that, but it's like there's almost two elements. Is that how you
Yes,
feel about that?
there really are. And it's true. And like the personal journey is so rich and deep. And a lot of times people want to bring people right then, without the embodiment or integration, which I know that you've done that work. But then when we get to the business side, it looks to me like there's just this opportunity for such artistry there. And that's what I like. I love the creative process of that because it's being able to hold that like really creative tension and then turn it into a
Yes.
creation. But it's like the pieces. Sometimes I feel like I know I did this, so this might relate to you. You might relate to this, or your audience might. But I sometimes would just try to bring things almost too literally into the world. Like I would have a seed that was planted, and so as women, like the seed gets planted in the womb, and I would automatically just want to birth the baby right then. And what I
Love
really,
that.
the journey I went on last year was I gestated something, like literally. Now I see, in retrospect, I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but I gestated something for probably 9 months, and then the baby gets birthed. And this is where I see online. One of the things I get a little spicy about is very few people can just go from idea, I've got a great offer, for instance, to birthing it the next day. It like that's not, it looks like that's what people are doing. So a lot of people try to copy that, but that's not what's really happening.
Yeah.
Right? The creative process. And so we have to iterate, we have to like hold that idea, nurture the seed,
Yeah.
so to speak.
I love that. And also what comes to me as you're saying that is like learn how to heal the parts of ourselves that can't yet be
Yes.
with that. Because I think the Secret Witch, again, particularly I know from my own journey, is very, very much being one of like the Secret Witch loves like chaos. Although we don't love chaos, like we're also kind of like
Yes.
addicted to the chaos. And like you said,
Yes.
we're doing all the things often because of this deep pattern, like you mentioned, of like that sense of like expectation and being really good at people pleasing and like being the one who holds all the things. And
Yes.
so there's almost like the healing reclamation of that, kind of allowing ourselves to be ourselves and to slow down and to tune in and to hear, and like you say, be in that kind of birthing, like, well, incubation period is what I'm
Yes.
hearing.
Yes, absolutely. And this is again, I feel like I was gifted that last year. I didn't that before so much. Like again, one of my gifts is I can do things pretty fast. I can find the shortcuts and so I was really used to that way of doing creation, really. But I knew there was something more. And so when I got gifted, like pause, slow down, like, oh yes, longer, yes, even longer, more time. It really, I got this appreciation for that incubation period, that gestation period of like letting things grow and like really referencing, and I know you do this too, like really referencing nature and the human body in this process. It's like, whoa, there are certain things that take time. They take time, the difference between like an oak tree, that just takes time for that acorn to become the full tree versus something like we have here in Texas, an invasive tree called the Arizona ash that like it shoots up and it gets big really fast, but it dies very quickly.
Yeah.
It doesn't live hundreds of years like an oak. And so I think it's such a great metaphor. There's so many great metaphors in nature and in humans themselves that we can reference.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, I always love the lessons that nature can gift us.
Yeah.
Um, mm, yeah, I love that, and I love everything you shared. I was just feeling where to go next because I would love to know your sense of like if people are feeling the fear of that. And I guess what we're talking about is being in the discovery of your authenticity to a degree as well.
Mhm.
I don't know if that feels true to you.
Mhm.
But like, what would you say to people who kind of fear and resist that kind of being in the incubation of who they really are, I guess. I guess what we could also describe it as like being an incubation of our soul.
For sure. Yeah, I would say, yeah. Oh gosh. So this is something I feel like I'm an expert and authority on.
Excellent.
Because now that we get to be experts and authorities, we have a lot of experience, right? Doing like I wanted to rush that process. I was very uncomfortable in the waiting period, in the incubation, in the gestation. And I think if people really want to shortcut it, we have to surrender. And that word's overused, like don't anyone roll your eyes. But truly we have to, when we're getting in that place of feeling uncomfortable, resisting that change, that's the signal. It's time, it's time to take the foot off the gas. It's the time to surrender. And that is the quickest way through it. It's not necessarily quick, but it's quicker than finding another project, finding, another hobby, finding
Mm,
another thing a course to immerse yourself in, right? Which is
yeah,
what we all do. We go learn something new and then we reset the process. And I
yeah.
did that dozens of times,
Mm,
dozens of
mm,
times. It cost me years, but I also believe in my journey. It's
yeah.
perfect the way it was.
Yeah, I think we're quite similar in that that's been my own journey too, and this sense of like, yeah, having to rush everything, and yeah, I was just telling you about birthing the membership, and there's still that sense of like, oh, but you're not, you need to hurry up, and it's like, no, I have to keep reminding myself, no, like trust the feminine way, like trust the feminine way
Yes.
of like allowing things to be revealed. I talk about that a lot in my work. It's like this sense of like we have to allow things to be revealed.
Yes.
But it's taken years of work for me to be able to even even hear that.
Right. No, I get it. That's been my process as well as I launched my authentic influence program. It's been like I've just had a knowing like no, it needs a little more time. It needs a little more time. Was trying to force something forward in December and it's like I told my husband who's now partnering with me on this. I said that I can't, like I literally am hitting a wall each time. It means it's not time right now. So we came
Mm,
back to this one piece in mid-January. And of course it came through like that.
mm,
But the old me would have forced it and cobbled it together. And,
mm,
yeah. And it just takes, like you're saying, that inner work, that really knowing ourselves, right?
mm,
To be able to pause like that and allow what really ends up being the quicker way through. It just doesn't seem like it
mm,
at the time.
yeah. And what comes up there for me is this sense of like loving that part of us that wants to rush as well.
Yes. Yes. Right.
Mm,
It's so precious in a way,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's so precious.
Yeah. No, that's gorgeous. There was something I can't remember if we just spoke to this. Something about like the fear of our authentic selves and this sense of like in the witch us being burned at the stake. So I guess once we've kind of been in that incubation process and we're kind of ready to birth the thing. And so I'm thinking of maybe like healers who have journeyed through, that process and they want to start to share it in the world. I'm wondering if you can speak to that part of the process where we've kind of like we've got the thing and we've kind of come to like, okay, this is what I'm here for, and like been through that
Yes.
discovery process. And of course, like as I said before, it's not linear, but like there can often be that fear that shows up of then expressing our authentic selves, our creations into the world. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah. That's a real inner journey as well. Like, to me, there's this part of us, the courageous part, that just needs to get a little bit stronger than the fearful part. And it can be that's a very small distinction at times.
Mm,
And like being willing, and this is where I was, and this may resonate with your audience and with you, is like, I know for myself, prior to this piece that I've been working on, I wasn't really willing, if I'm honest, to put myself out there and fail, or put myself
Mm,
out there and be criticized, or put
mm,
myself out there and be disappointed. Like, I wanted no part of any of that because I had this still part of my identity. I'm a high achiever. I'm good at getting things done, you know? And I think what changed for me is like realizing that way is not going to bring my soul's work into the world. Those two
mm.
things are
I
on
love
different
that.
levels of consciousness.
Oh, oh, maybe you can talk more about that as well.
Yeah.
But I love what you said there. It feels like a real like truth bomb moment of like, yeah, that kind of sense that particularly the fear of failing. I think so many secret witches, and myself included, have journeyed with that to some degree, or you know, feeling like that's one of their fears. Like, well, what if I share my message? What if I express who I am, and then it's rejected, or it doesn't, you know, it falls flat on its face, or you know,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like there's that sense, and I think what I'm hearing in what you're saying, and this is something that aligns with how I see it and how I how I've experienced it by working with the witch, is a sense of like the witch did come here to be liked.
Right. Like, it's nice when she is, isn't it?
Mm,
But that's not really why.
mm,
And it's realizing, like, I think what I finally realize is, oh yeah, sometimes when I express my true self, there are going to be people who love it, and then there are going to be people who hate it. And sometimes like nobody's going to respond at all. Like,
mm,
like all of that is going to happen.
mm,
You know what I mean? And again, this is where I think when we get conditioned into high achieving, it's all about success and a positive outcome.
mm,
Everything is oriented that way. So through this growth and through this inner work, we just start to see, okay, that path gets us to a certain place, right? It gets outward success, but that it doesn't really feel authentic. It doesn't necessarily feel aligned.
mm,
So we're going to have to take a different path, the one we're talking about, where everything's included, including some people are going to love us, some people are going to hate us. So like, I had a post not long ago that like had some behind the scenes conversations about like someone thought it was about them and someone else thought I was talking about, so like that kind of thing. And I was just expressing not anything specifically about any person, but just about a situation that I didn't like and that I was
mm.
calling attention to.
Yeah, I love
Some
that.
people
And
like it.
there's such a power in that. Like just to know, yeah, that's really gorgeous. And
Yeah.
I think so liberating for so many of our listeners who are like, oh God, I can't even admit that I'm a witch. But like to just be like, okay, well, some people aren't gonna like what I've shared, and that's good. Like I'm good with
Yes.
that.
Yeah. It felt great. Like, I felt very empowered the more I bring, some of my spicier things forward, the more
Mm,
empowered I feel. And sometimes I get my feelings a little hurt too. That's
mm,
okay. That's all right.
mm. Oh
I
yeah.
live.
Yeah.
I'm living through it. And that's this life, right? Like this lifetime, not, I don't want to diminish anything people potentially have experienced in other lifetimes as well. Like, I think there's so much as women that we carry in that place. But my sense is in this lifetime for so many of us is that we're here to, yeah, like light other souls on fire and make it. Yeah, we're here. To me, you and I we're trailblazers. We're burning a path for other women,
I love that
right?
so much. I've got this like visual now of like holding a torch, and it's funny you
Yes.
say that actually because the archetypal remedy that is the witch that I often describe is archetypal phosphorus, which is essentially what's on the end of a match. So I love,
Mm.
yeah, I love the symbolism, of course.
Yeah,
It's made it
I
so
love it.
exciting. Yeah. No, that does feel so freeing for so many, and obviously as well, you know, probably the listeners like, well, great, it's surely not that simple that we just, you know, show up and express and be okay with that. And you know, from my experience, there was a lot of you'll probably know the phrase material for liberation in that, like in choosing into like being vulnerable and expressing our hearts and
Yeah.
having people not like necessarily, like it is a really vulnerable thing to do. And I think what's your sense of like how you deal with that vulnerability?
Like everything else, it's really allowing, opening to it, right? Because I think when we do open ourselves to that vulnerability, that specific one that you're talking about, I think it deepens our capacity for love, right? It's like that, just opening our hearts, even though it might feel like there's someone's just like stabbing us in the heart, but it deepens our capacity on the other side as well.
I love
And
that.
I love
Yeah.
to keep that in mind. Um, yeah, it's like we can't experience one without the other.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, it's like I often say, if we're numbing ourselves with something, we're not feeling our pain, but we're also not feeling our joy. And that's kind of, it's almost like what I'm hearing you say in that, if that feels true.
Yes. Yeah, so much. So many years I lived in that middle zone
Mm.
of it was okay.
Yeah.
Not a lot of disappointment, not a lot of joy. And
Mm.
that I just was like when I had that sort of, I don't know, second or third spiritual awakening in 2016, it's like, no, I really want to live, actually.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
this is part of that. This is, using our voice is like we get to experience all of life in
Mm.
that, right? All of the reactions, the people that are going, you go girl, and the ones who go like, what are you nuts? Like all of that is part of it.
I love that. And I love that you specifically said, are you nuts? Because I think that's one of the fears of the secret witch is this sense of like, often there's a sense of like being a lunatic. Like, mm, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's all okay.
yeah.
It's all
I love
okay.
that. I love that. So permission giving. Yeah. I'm just wondering, let me just have a feel where else to go. Because I think I wanted to talk about this piece about authentic influence. Because I think also what comes up in that, and I know you've been sharing a lot more about that recently, because it's kind of like your body of work as well. I'd love to know kind of how that means, because almost the two
Mhm.
words conflict, and I suspect that's
Yeah.
intentional.
Yes.
um, but there's this sense, particularly for the secret witch, of this of like wanting to be magnetic, wanting to for people
Yeah.
to see her, to feel her message, to and rightly so. Like we've often got some kind of healing gift to offer in our expression when we're healers, and then also simultaneously like this idea of influence feeling like really yucky. So I'm wondering if you can speak to
Yeah.
that.
There's so much there. So influence, like I think sometimes people get like I draw a distinction between manipulation and influence. Like I've always been told I'm a very influential person. I laugh because like I've always carried a bit of extra weight my whole life, but like if I talk about a diet for people, it will influence people to go lose weight. And I mean, are you crazy? Why did you listen to me? So I carry natural influence. But
I
there's
love
such
that.
a difference between manipulation, which I think is where
Mm,
people feel like when I started working on authentic influence before I knew that was the name of it, what I was really standing against was so much in the online space, especially in the women's online space, that was this, hype and FOMO and manipulation
mm,
and like and I fell for a lot of that. I'm being honest, like I I really took that in, and you would get sort of behind closed doors and go like, "Wait, this is the same thing I bought? Like what?" Like
mm.
it was all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
And so, however, like I know there are those of us who our voices are meant to be heard, and that's influence. It is influence,
Mm,
not in a way that's destructive or manipulative or, leading people astray, but we do need to have influence. And that's
mm,
when that those words came to me, authentic influence. I thought, well, that's such a great play, because this is a zone that we can play with,
yeah.
right? We can play with, like, for me, you've seen me post some spicy things on social media, and I always get a lot of like people really like that. And then there's the point of me who's like, the ego wants to keep doing it,
Mm,
right? Because of the attention. But the authentic part of me is like, okay, you said that, you don't, you covered that topic. right?
Mm.
So it's really playing with the lines of
Ooh.
influence and doing it very consciously.
Mm.
Because again, like how many of us, have been conditioned to, if people like it, give them more, give them more.
Mm.
Right? That to me is where it goes into manipulation.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, so I think it's a fun place to play. And a lot of times, like with my clients, we're really talking about playing with our message in that way,
Mm.
iterating, getting creatives. My husband at one point, this is a great place for this story. He worked for a world renowned chef, Dave Chang. He's really big here in America, Korean chef and Korean American, and they were in the kitchen, and Dave was asking the chefs, is it spicy enough, this dish they were making? And all the chefs said, yes, it's spicy enough. And they said, have you made it too spicy yet? And they said, no. And he said, there's no way to know if it's spicy enough
Mm.
then. Right? This is to me what we're doing with our message. Not that it has to be spicy, but like
Mhm.
our level of authenticity, our level of self expression, our level of sometimes, yeah, getting, oppositional or whatever. We're not going to know until we've
Mm.
crossed the line. And that's an
I
inner
love
line. I'm
that.
not talking about like
Mm.
what people are saying.
Mhm.
I'm talking about internally,
Mhm.
right? I'm like, okay, yeah, I have covered that. I don't need to go there anymore. Or like,
Mm.
ooh, that didn't mean to quite, be that spicy, but we won't know until we play with it and cross the line. That's how you know.
I love that. Again, it's a sense of like leaning into it being okay if that doesn't that kind of fail, or whatever it is that comes up for us is we're crossing the line.
Yes.
Mm. What occurred to me when you're talking about influence there was almost like this sense of like pure, authentic influence, and like the almost like clean of shadow in some way. And
Yes.
by that I mean almost like the manipulation piece is the shadow of influence. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yes. Yes. It's like what I'm really realizing about authentic influence. Like I didn't design it this way, or I didn't have this in my, it's a frequency. It's a frequency.
Ooh,
That's
tell
what
me
I
more.
really feel, that it's a frequency we tap into. And like, I can feel in myself when I tap into it, and I can really hear it in other people, is what
Mm.
I'm realizing. Like when they hit it, I'm like, that's it right there. That's
Mm.
it. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that. Mm. Yeah, I love that so
Yeah.
much.
It's really juicy. Like I get very, when I start talking about this work, like I get very jazzed up, because it's
Mm.
funny to think about myself crying when I got the message, to now, like, you can see me lighting up as I start to talk about it. Like, it's what I'm here to do,
Yeah, yeah, I
you
love
know?
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
soul will call us to what we're here for, and yeah, often, as we said, we won't necessarily feel that that's a great thing all the time. It
Right.
takes such courage to like answer that call. I'm wondering what, knowing that frequency piece, because I'm interested in the frequency piece. Like, how does it feel when you're in the frequency? Because I guess like being in the two different frequencies, like the manipulation versus the authentic influence, would probably feel different. And I think it's quite a I wonder if you can even define
Mm,
that, like in terms of sensation.
yeah. It's such a good question. So, if I had to describe it, so the authentic influence frequency, like to me, when I'm in self-expression, so that's either I'm speaking to the camera or I'm writing. Those are my two main ways I express. Like it really does feel like riding a laser beam. Like almost as though uh I mean, I don't want to like overstate this, but like it's like the divine coming through either my
Mm.
voice or my hand as I write.
Mm.
And like, it's unmistakable. Like, I can tell when I'm in, I don't always get in that frequency when I'm writing. Like, I love to, but like, I'm not always gifted with that, right? I'm not always
Mm.
able to tune in.
Mm.
Versus the manipulation one, like, I feel that, and I didn't ever before, I didn't ever purposely try to manipulate people. It wasn't that, but I was much more concerned about myself and my sales and is this going to convert? Like, that's kind of that
Mm.
frequency. It's just
Yeah,
a, you know?
I think that's almost like a patriarchal conditioning in some ways. Is the
Yes.
sense of like, yeah, just being conditioned. That's how the world works. Again, innocently, um, that's the metrics are success, and success looks this way, and that sort of thing. So I don't know your view on that, but yeah, so it feels like there's a sense of like that kind of manipulation being in that, wanting to get something out of it or receive
Yes.
something or
Yes. And even that frequency of manipulation, right? Like if you think about when do, like, why would someone need to manipulate to get what they
mm,
want? Well, if they feel like what they want isn't accessible to them,
mm, mm,
like that would be the right, like that we're not living in a universe that absolutely will provide what we need.
mm,
That's why someone would manipulate. And that's why
mm,
I made a post not long ago about how about how all of that mystery and manipulation and FOMO and all that is low level consciousness. That's the one that
mm.
really got me
Yeah.
skewered. A lot of people loved it and really heard what I was saying, but that's what it was getting at. It's like, wait a minute, if you really believe that you can have and create with the divine what you want, there is no reason to manipulate people.
Mm.
It's
Ooh,
scarcity. It's
I love
subtle, but
that.
like it is there.
Mm.
And so I know for myself before, like I just had doubt. Can I create what I want? And so I would be thinking about how do I get people over the line or whatever. And it's just
Mm.
not a conversation I have anymore because I'm really trying to tap into that authentic influence frequency,
I love
right?
that.
Where the
And what
baseline,
I was
yeah,
just
the
saying,
baseline is we can create what we want.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just hearing a sense of like true authentic expression being like our soul writing, in essence, or our soul expression, like just the truth, our truth. Is that
Yeah.
true? Is that kind of what how you describe it?
Yeah. I would say that for sure. Like I think for me, like my practice of that is sitting with myself in the morning, really tuning in deep in the body. And sometimes I'll say, what does my soul want to say today? What needs to be expressed? Sometimes that happens when I'm out on my walk. I don't force it. I like consistency in my message, but if I really don't have the thing, you won't see me post on social media or write an email.
Yeah. Yes.
It's like it
Yeah.
really is that level of authenticity. I'm not going to force
Yes.
myself. Now, what I
Mm.
find is the more tuned into this I get, the more I
Yeah.
have to write. I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
in
I feel you in that. Yeah.
because we really are really tapped into something so big.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And I was just wondering how that kind of then interfaces with traditional marketing. Because I know we talked about that a little bit at the beginning, but like there's this sense of because again often and this is quite common for women who land in this listening to this podcast, maybe they've been healers or they've been kind of training to be a healer and they've done all the quick fixes and they've like learned how to I don't know be a shamanic practitioner or a homeopath or a healer of some kind, and then they also get lost in this kind of minefield of marketing quick fixes. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious if you can speak to that. And I know some
Oh,
people listening to this aren't necessarily that far down the path. They might just be kind of here for the personal healing of authenticity and that kind of reclamation of that. But I think it's also helpful to just explore.
yeah. So, once most of my business over the years when I was doing like strictly business coaching, like it always came to me referral word of mouth. I had a big business network, just from spending so much time in corporate and in leadership and that sort of thing. And so, messaging and marketing weren't really my jam, although I had actually experience in that
Mm,
area in corporate. But eventually, like being online became more important. And so I'm like, okay, well, I need to learn some of this. So I don't know, Nicole, I probably took over a dozen programs, courses, copywriters, like all of the things to
mm,
figure this out. And every time I would come out feeling like either not being seen, like the message not at all representing who I am, or like not enough structure to really get behind. Like I couldn't I
mm,
couldn't get sorted. And I spent a lot of money and a lot of time on that.
mm, mm,
And so when I think about this part now, it's what I like to give people enough structure. So like I kind of think about it like scaffolding, that stuff that you put on the outside of the building that allows people to like put the cladding on the outside of the building. That's what I like to think about as what I'm doing for people, is giving them enough structure to hold their creativity. Right. And so, because I
I
think a
love
lot of
that.
us have been
There's almost a sense then of like that masculine holding of the feminine.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly like that. And it's because I just got really scarred by the traditional marketing things. Like
Mm.
I literally could not do it.
Mm.
And, like I remember one of the last courses I took, I thought this is going to be the one. You know how you do, this is going to be the one.
This is definitely it now. Yeah.
And it was going pretty well. And I thought, okay, I'm feeling good about this. And then we got to one section of the course and it started talking about sleight of mouth patterns. And I was like, that sounds like deception. So I look it up. I'm like, I want to make sure it is deception. I'm like, they're blatantly teaching this.
Wow.
And this was someone who I felt I had a lot of respect for and thought was solid. And I'm thinking, why would you teach that? It doesn't make any sense. And so, like, there's so much to it. There's a layered approach. So we take some structure, because I think, again, as feminine women, as women in this, like, we need the masculine, we need something to hold on to, but it also needs to really allow for that creative expression and creativity. Like, it can't be all that, or there's nothing, like, there's nothing to hold. And so that's what I feel, that I've been creating, and I continue to iterate. And
I love that you say continue to iterate as well, because the other thing is that we kind of expect like we're going to just have to get it right on the first go. And like that's such a myth.
yes,
Like we really just start expressing and see what lands and see like where, it's kind of like an evolving thing.
yes,
Alongside the kind of deeper work of like what's our point of view and what we're here to help people with and where are we taking them from and to. But like there's a kind of, you learn by expressing. Like we forget that like as we express, we learn.
yes, yes. And this has been like one of my biggest lessons, Nicole, is because I do have that Virgo stellium. Like, I have a lot of stuff in Virgo, but equally I have like straight across a lot in Pisces. And I wasn't comfortable with that kind of more watery Pisces. I'm very comfortable with logic and step A, step B, step C. I'm really good at all that. And iteration was not something, even though I'm a designer by background, we iterated in design. I got really good at just going from start to finish in one fell swoop. This is something else entirely. And I've had to really get comfortable with, even with my program, constant iteration of like, oh, there's a better way to do that. I see how we could get this even deeper or even faster or whatever, even more clear. And I think it keeps making the work better and better. And it's given me this real respect for, people like artists who do constantly iterate and try things and throw spaghetti against a wall. And like, I've really enjoyed that process. And I would have said that was impossible for me,
I love that.
so that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, that is cool. That's amazing. I love that. There was something else that came to me then, and I just lost it. I think it's about the AI, because AI is fairly new, and yet I think probably the perception of it out there is that there's like a robot writing something for you, which
Yeah.
also kind of conflicts with this idea of
Yes.
authenticity. So I'd love to
Mhm.
hear a little bit more about that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So glad you asked about that. So, and here's the funny thing with AI, because if you go, if like you scroll Facebook or Instagram, like you can really see people are having AI write for them. It's very, like, because I work with it a lot in other ways. It's very obvious to me. There are patterns in it, and I'm not to shame anyone who's doing that. Like, I suppose that's better than not expressing yourself at all. But what I started to see with AI when I used it is that, like, I could write a bunch of stuff about myself, like all of my, like, I'm talking about stellium in Virgo, stellium in Pisces. It's interesting being me some days. Like, these are real opposites, And so I could write all these different things about myself and my background of experience and how I have a lot of opposites in my astrology chart and put all that in. And when I was trying to make sense of that for a message without the use of AI, it was like very confusing at best. So I could load a lot of stuff into AI about myself and say, what do you see? And like what it would give back to me was like, oh my gosh, I feel really seen. Like it makes
that. It's like, oh, the robot sees me. Finally, somebody.
yeah. And it really, like, what I've noticed over time with AI is, can people use it for nefarious purposes? Absolutely. It really is going to match the consciousness of the person using it.
Mm.
It's
Ooh.
yeah. So what you put in, and this is where people, I think, make some mistakes using it with marketing. If you're a person who doesn't understand marketing at all, right? And you ask a question and ask it to write marketing copy for it, it's going to do that. AI never says, I don't know. It goes after stuff. You know what I mean? It's never going to say, I don't know. It's going to give you back. So this is where people are using it that like it's efficient, but they use it in a way that you can tell this is not moving the needle forward in your business. Like I can tell if I'm reading something, ooh, that person is not, they're not quite getting it. If you don't know what to ask and the level of consciousness with which to ask it, it's just an efficient way to probably not really move the needle. But when we get really this relationship with it, and it understands our values and it understands what we're really trying to do in the world, because it can understand that, it doesn't have a heart, but it can understand really high level concepts. Like it's just magical. And then we don't have to, as women, and especially for me as an aging woman, I don't have to hold all this stuff in my brain constantly. I can use my mind and my brain for my creativity. So that to me, like I use AI as the masculine for my feminine creation.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes. Masculine.
And this is what I'm
feminine.
teaching the people in my groups to do, because it's yes, you can use it to write for you, but I don't, like it has so much better uses, especially for when we talk about messaging and marketing, I think.
I love that so much. Yeah. Gorgeous. I'd love to hear a bit more actually. I don't know how we're doing on time. I think we're all right. I just got carried away. I'd love to hear more about the levels of consciousness if that feels like something you could break down, because that
Cool.
is juicy too.
Yeah, this is one of the things I'm really passionate about, and I'm actually going to do a workshop on this upcoming in the next few months because I really want to bring this out. So all of us are operating at a level of consciousness, and really multiple, like, so many of the people that probably are listening to this, and certainly we have an evolved consciousness. I would call that an intuitive level of consciousness.
Yes.
And so when we hit that intuitive level, it means we're divinely guided. It would be another way to say it. We're spending less and less time in our A plus B equals C, and like really letting ourselves be divinely led, and, creativity and that sort of thing. But the majority of the world is not there. They may occasionally touch it, but most people don't even really touch it. This is a very small percentage of people. I would say between 2 and 5% of people touch that consciousness. And then coming in, not that they're really levels, one's not better than the other. I'm not saying that, but then you kind of drop down to intellectual consciousness, which is where many high achievers are, right? It's in that level. And so this is where it's using knowledge. You use a lot of knowledge at that level. And then there are people, of course, at willful and then reactive consciousness. And some, reactive is where you find people, as an example, who maybe have addictions and that sort of thing. And then willful is when people are just really using their will to create everything. So lots of people in that willful and intellectual, but those of us who have this more evolved consciousness, again, it's not better than other people, but there's some of us, like, we're torchbearers, right? We have to learn how to speak again at different levels of consciousness, because that's where our people really are. Most people, like, I feel like what I see so much is that, and I did this for a long time, so I know it well, but like I would just only want to speak at my level. But the people at our level don't really need our medicine.
Yeah.
It's when people are sort of at different levels. So we really take this into account in marketing and sales and that sort of thing. Because when we can start to translate our magic into language that a different level of consciousness understands, we're going to have so many clients at that level, you know? And so this is one of the things I feel like what has been revealed to me as part of my divine purpose is really helping people who do have that evolved consciousness. They've got their magic. They're in touch with their soul. The way to get them more influence in the world, more impact, is to have them be able to talk at different levels. Because that's what's going to bring these people in. The frequency is going to bring in our people, right? But at that lower level, again, not that it's better or worse, but like it's just there are so many people that can benefit.
I love that. I often describe, we have to heal ourselves in order to be healers. What that can often get commonly misunderstood as is like we have to be fully healed in order.
Right.
So what I mean by that is like we have to have healed something, but there will always be people further on the journey behind us. And I guess that's kind of like almost reflective of what you're speaking to there as levels of consciousness, in that there's somebody at a different level that needs for us to share at that level, to meet them where they are.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's really meeting people where they're at, which is such a respectful and loving way to be with people. Like really yeah, and like some days I would rather just float around in my when I feel more elevated, but really if I really want to have the impact in the world that I want to, this is part of it.
I love that. The question that comes up as well is like how we remain authentic in those different levels of consciousness in what we're
Yes.
sharing.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting question. It's something that we definitely explore a lot. But it's really I think so much of the theme of what we've been talking about is it's playing with it, it's testing it, it's iterating, it's, trying something, getting feedback, and then trying again. And this is why I will teach a workshop at some point on this, because I think there are certain like real marketing-y things that can show us that as well. But it's yeah, like I just want people to really hear that like all of our medicine is needed in the world, right? Like there's just a fractal that needs, Nicole, I know you already know this, like they need exactly what you're giving, right? And there's a fractal that needs, and for every person listening, if the conversation is listening, this is part of it, is there is someone that needs that medicine. And this is why our voices are so important, because they can't, if we're in a different frequency, right? If we're not in our authentic frequency, it doesn't draw in those people who are really meant for us.
I love that so much. I often speak to that as like almost like that being that pure expression of our remedy, and having healed all the layers that stop us being in that pure expression of the remedy, because I can see that there's kind of like, I call them remedy states, but like times in our lives where we've had wounding that has stopped us from expressing that, like the people pleasing, the fear of failure, all of those sorts of things. The more that we can heal that, the more we're able to like purely channel what it is, the message that we're here to share in the world. So I love what you just shared there. And also, funnily, I asked a question in my mind and was like, I'm going to ask why authenticity is so important. You just answered it.
Of course.
Yeah, of
I
course.
love it. I love it.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything to add to that, but it felt like you already answered it, even though I asked the question in my head.
Yes, I must have heard you. I love it. I love it. But yeah, that's really the point, is it's, so many things become really good spiritual ideas and concepts, but I'm more practical than that. Like I think, like, I don't think it's because authenticity is a better way to be than inauthentic. It's practical. Like this is practical because our authenticity draws people to us that can't hear us when we're in an inauthentic expression. This is where like what's been happening to me so much since late September is just people come into my world and into my inbox, and I can't make sense of it. It doesn't like make common sense. It doesn't make logical sense. but it's the frequency. It's people can feel that.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that, and I so feel the truth in that. Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Because I don't know if you've ever worked with Gene Keys, but yeah, in my Gene Keys profile, I have the truth twice. And so it's like super important, and it makes so much sense given that I'm here to work with the witch wound, and like that's been very much my own journey is of like learning how to share my voice amidst like all these fears. And so yeah, I think this is just a really gorgeous exploration of that. I remember, I mean, I think I've shared before, probably not to you, but like I just remember at one point in time, just like going into to teach yoga, and I was learning how to teach yoga, and we had to sit in this circle and share like why we were there, and I couldn't even open. I couldn't even speak because I was just so terrified. So like it's been such a journey, but for me it feels like so vital to even just for the personal side of like expression, like learning how to express themselves, use our voice. And I know you said interestingly that piece around like, oh, my throat, just before I'm about to share my throat's, and that happens to me as well. And I just think it's so important for me also. Um, and this is probably going off on a complete tangent, but there's one of the main wisdom bodies that I work with as a healer is homeopathy, and that's kind of woven into the work I do. Um, and homeopathy's kind of main principle is about the cause of disease or disease being suppression. And so, if you think about that on a very kind of physical level, and we think about how we are conditioned to suppress ourselves, like reclaiming our authenticity really is vital just for our health.
Yes. So, okay, this is a bit of a tangent, but I have to say this because of what you brought up with homeopathy in the throat. So, when I was a child, between ages 5 and 12, I held the record at my doctor's office for having strep throat the most times.
Wow. Mm.
Like seeing this, like, and I didn't put all these pieces together, until recently. I'm like, this is why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's yeah,
Mm.
interesting.
The body's such a guide as well to our medicine, to what we're here for. So I love that. That's a
Yes.
gorgeous
I
example.
love that.
Yeah, the body knows the score is actually my last podcast guest has quoted this morning. So
Oh,
he was
amazing.
talking about homeopathy, so that's what kind of reminded me. But yeah, I love that. I would love to know if there's anything else that feels like we haven't explored before we complete.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we have covered such beautiful ground. It's really reiterating what we were saying earlier. And it's like I want the people listening to have the experience of it's safe to play with our message and it's safe to play with the voice and expression,
Mm.
and we won't know what's on the other side of that until we actually do it. Like we
Mm.
can't figure it out enough on this side of expression
Mm.
without
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
can't ever get and that's what most people want to do. Like I know that. I was
Yeah.
the with that.
Mm.
But it's if we cross that line and just start to express, we're going to get more and more. We're going to be gifted more and more. That's what I keep seeing is like just when I think, oh, I couldn't possibly have another insight about this, I get something else. And so I want people to have that gift. That's when life gets really juicy.
I love that so much. Just the idea of like taking that aligned action, and we can't really fully like heal and alchemize it without doing so. Like we learn so much in doing that. But I think that's a really powerful takeaway. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Mm.
it.
Thank you
I've,
so much. I would
I've
like,
enjoyed that.
yeah, me too. I would love for you to share more about where people can find you, what you're working on, all of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Absolutely. I'm a social media person. I love, for all its good things and bad things. I really do love social media. It can easily be found on Facebook, or LinkedIn, a little bit of Instagram. I may get better at that. I kind of have a love hate with Instagram, but that's just under my name. I know you have links to that. The projects, of course, that I'm working on right now, I have taken my Authentic Influence program from a one-to-one program, which is where I launched it last year in November. and have just opened the doors to my founding members of that program. We're going to be doing as a group program, because what I really learned was that it's huge for people to be witnessed in their voice and in their expression in a safe place. So we've made it just very accessible for people, and I'll be talking more publicly about that in March. That's when we'll actually officially roll out the welcome mat for people. But that's the biggest project I've been working on. That's
Amazing.
yeah, it's so good.
Gorgeous. That sounds magical. Well, I am celebrating you and all your magical creation of that. And that sounds great. We'll put all the links to that in the show notes. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I've enjoyed this so much.
Me too. Thank you so much, my love. I so love Kim. Here are my takeaways. We can often feel unsafe to express ourselves due to the expectations of society, which often has us stuck in patterns of staying on the hamster wheel, burning out, people pleasing, and hiding our magic. To begin the journey back to authenticity requires us to get quiet, to slow down, to pause, and attune to our inner wisdom, even though that can feel really challenging and we also might not like what we hear. We have to have time to gestate our rebirth. Facing our fears of expressing ourselves is not easy and requires deep courage and acceptance that being authentic and sharing our voices may result in both adoration and criticism, and staying open to seeing that that is okay. As aspiring healers, it's important to learn a new way of business and marketing that comes from a more feminine lens, supported by the masculine, rather than some of the more traditional marketing approaches which come from the lens of lack and manipulation. To do that, we need to learn to have what she called authentic influence, to embody the frequency of purity and truth, which is different from manipulative marketing. Whilst we might think that AI is robotic and the opposite of authenticity, AI can actually be a really supportive container to hold our message and all that it entails as we begin to create, offering a masculine structure of remembering our values whilst allowing us to focus on authentic expression. There are different levels of consciousness: intuitive, intellectual, willful, and reactive, which influence how we market ourselves as healers, and it's helpful to have awareness of these and which level both we and the people we serve are in, so that we can reach people authentically. There's also no right in how we express our message as healers, only learning to be had. We just have to start expressing our souls and be open to learning what meets people where they are.